Welcome to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So, stay with us as right now we present. We're going to have a fascinating discussion today. I got the feeling because we've got a gentleman who is, like sitting right there, and he he is an author. He's a publisher. But that's not exactly why we're here today, because we're going to talk about his life's journey through addiction, which led to some incarceration, which led to other issues that he's had, and then how he got through that to see the light and to become the man that he is today. And Robert, welcome to the show. How are you? And if you can pronounce your last name for me, so I don't massacre it for you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. My last name is pronounced Kiyosi, Robert Kiyosi from
Is that Italian?
yeah, that's Italian. That's like Mama's Sunday gravy. That's very Italian. My middle name Romolo. So yes, I come from a, a strong Italian family in the northern part of New Jersey, where Italian is thick and so is the gravy.
and and I would imagine that because Italian families love to cook together and to eat together, that there's an event that happens every so often where everybody in the family gets together, and you have a lot of folks that just have a good time eating and creating what you eat and then eating what you create.
Yeah, definitely. And then, as the generations progress, it's the reins are taken up by the younger, and that's passed down. I remember when it was my grandfather and then my father, doing the cooking, and my mom a little bit too. She was more Irish than Italian, so but now, now I'm the one who likes to do the cooking, so it's a handed down, it's a learned process. It's in our DNA.
It's amazing how over the years. I remember at a family get together, and I was sitting there alone. I was a teenager, and I was sitting there with my whole family. um, they're all gone now, and it's like now I am the older one, and all around the kids and that kind of stuff. So it's amazing how you are the young one, and then you're not, and then you're now the old one, so you get the full range of experiences.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I'm the oldest of all of my cousins, and I remember, I was in high school when they were just being born, and recently I went to one of the youngest cousins, her wedding, and I'm like, oh man, I'm one of the older family members here sitting here, and it's really weird, to well, I mean, as opposed to not getting older, uh, I'll take it. But it's
Exactly.
it's very weird to because in my head I'm still, I'm 17, or at the very best I'm 22 inside my head, but the body is every bit of 55.
It is, yeah. I get
Yeah,
that, and I know that's hard. And wait for the next 10 years; it gets even harder. But
oh,
that's
I can't wait.
so. Let's talk about. And I'm thank you for being here, by the way, and thank you for being so open and honest about the struggles that you went through, and that really was a journey from when you were a kid and getting into substance abuse and all of that, and then that led to a series of events. Would you want to tell us a little bit about all of
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Well, I'll just go. As a kid, growing up, I knew there was something different about me because, while everybody does, they drink or they start smoking weed or whatever they do, most kids will experiment. With me, it was more than an experiment. Like I was immediately that guy who had to go to extremes with everything that I did. Um, the first time I went into my parents' refrigerator and took a beer out, I didn't sip it, I didn't taste it. I chugged it as fast as I could to get that effect from it. And once I got that effect, I went in and I got another one. I think the first time I got really drunk, I got to the point where I almost gave myself alcohol poisoning. So there's always been something in me that's, I've got that addictive gene, that personality that just wants to chase it and cannot distinguish when enough is enough, because there is no such thing as enough for me. Now, throughout my life, I guess, I didn't find the substance right away that was going to take me down. I dabbled with little more gateway harmless substances that, I managed to skate by without really getting into, the trouble that was certainly coming my way. I was smoking weed for a really long time. I was drinking for a long time, and I kept pushing the limits and pushing the variance, adding more concoctions to that mix. Um, I got married. I held down a job. I opened up a business, and even had a nice house. And we were living in Florida, in a beautiful house on a lake. But there was something missing. I was unsatisfied, and that was in me. The thing that was missing was something within myself, and I didn't know it at the time. And I ran into opiates at that point. This was the early 2000s, right when the opioid addiction was about to happen. And when I first did OxyContin, um, it triggered something in me, like this. Oh, so this is what was missing. Um, it was this switch had been turned on, and that there was no turning back at that point. I was just off to the races. I won't say I was immediately hooked on it, but I was immediately drawn to it, infatuated with that feeling, and ready to go full speed ahead with that.
I got a question for you because I interviewed a young lady recently. She lost her son when he was 32, but when he was like 18 or 19, it's right when Oxycontin came out. And he had to have his large intestine removed because he had some sort of colitis or some major problem. And so when they left the hospital, everybody had been told, the doctors had been told, Oxycontin is non habit forming, according to her. And
Hmm.
they gave him 180 pills, and he never looked back. He was hooked by the time he finished that first prescription. Is that is OxyContin that pervasive that it can do that to you that quickly?
Yeah, so it's synthetic heroin. Um,
Oh,
that's what it is. It's every pathway that drug takes is the same thing that heroin does, which is it saturates your brain receptors. So essentially, your cells in your brain, they're not connected, and they communicate to each other through sending electrical impulses to them. Now the pain receptors in there, you figure like a mass here with a lot of holes in it being your pain receptors. And when an opiate like OxyContin or heroin saturates the brain, it fills those pain receptors. And what the cell does is now produces hundreds and thousands of more pain receptors. So now you're starving for the drug. Um, and also, if you don't do the drug, you feel like you are in severe pain. Um, so there's a whole physiological thing that goes on with the brain of an addict when they're hooked on opiates. And, not to mention the psychological, okay, because now heroin or Oxycontin um, supersedes your survival instincts, and everything that, getting the drug now becomes more important than eating, than bathing, than relationships. So essentially, your survival instinct is now focused on the use and acquiring more of the drug.
It's expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll take you down financially for sure. Um, back in the day when I was first getting started, there were the pill mills and doctors writing out, false, fake, fake prescriptions, and it was at its cheapest point back then, um, which still ended up, taking everything I had. Um, and of course, it rose because, the more you use, the more you need to use. So that keeps escalating. So it really doesn't matter how much you got, you're always going to need more than what you have. At least that was the case with me, and I've heard it from a lot of other addicts too, who can testify to that as well.
Now, did that lead you, or does that lead people to like fentanyl and some of those things? Because fentanyls are a fairly new synthetic drug, isn't it?
Yeah, my only fortunate for me, I had gotten in trouble and gotten locked up before fentanyl was actually making its presence known. When I was in the prison system was when they were using fentanyl to cut heroin, and occasionally bags of heroin would come into the prison system, and you would know because guys were dropping dead from it. Because you're essentially your people in prison are usually removed from using drugs like they did on the streets. Usually, some people can carry on like they did um, prior. But when that stuff comes in through the system, however it comes in, guys will fall out, and a lot of them passed away. A lot of guys I lived with there passed away during their time, because they still weren't over the using of it.
You don't hear a lot about that in like the media and that sort of thing. A number of people that are dying from that in actual. I suppose they don't want to tell us that because the wardens and the prison people don't want it to be known that drugs are still in the prison system.
Yeah, well, it comes in multiple ways, but honestly, drugs come in most of the time through people who are walking in and out of the doors of the prisons. So those are the people who work in prisons, and that would be a reason why they wouldn't want that too widely known.
I can understand. So to take us through it a little bit. You
Yeah.
got hooked on the stuff, and then you had to find a way to finance it. And was that through illegal means? Is that how you were still financing the habit?
Originally, I lied. I begged and I borrowed to get the money to support myself. And when that did not happen, I went to illegal means to fund my addiction. And, at one point, I walked into a convenience store with a paper bag and put it on the table and said, fill it up. And they did, and I went to prison for that, um, and definitely not a proud moment in my life, but it was a wake up call. Um, it was 10 years ago, actually, on October 29th. I was brought into the town holding cell where I did the robbery. And I'm in this little tiny cell, and there's a poster on the wall, and it shows a girl who was in high school, and and she's really good looking, and she looks, like she's very well put together. And then there's a picture of the same girl like 2 years later, and she's ravaged by the drug use that she's been doing. And I'll never forget it. The title on the poster was "Heroin. It does a body good." Um, I'll, I will never forget that. So I got locked up that day, and because I had multiple things hanging over me, I had the potential of a lot of years facing me in prison. I ended up doing 8 years in the prison system, and I consider October 30th, 2012, the first day that I was totally without any substance in my body. But I celebrated on Halloween for just because you know, it's a little more easy of a day to remember. And so this Halloween, I celebrated 10 years without having had a drink or a drug or a cigarette or any substance in my body other than coffee.
Congratulations is the first thing that I want to say.
Oh, thank you. I'm not looking for a cake. I'm just I say it because when we talk about our clean time and we talk about our struggles, how we get there, it offers hope to people who are out there also struggling. And honestly, like if I could do it, I mean, I had to go to prison to get clean, but like if you're out there and you're listening, man, you don't have to go to prison to get clean because there are a lot of ways to go about this. And, really, I didn't get clean until I knew I needed to and I wanted to, because I could have still been doing the wrong thing when I was there. It's, uh, it's an inside job and it takes change, and change is never comfortable. We fight that every ounce of our being, but
Yes, we do.
yeah, it's not comfortable, but you've got to want it, and you've got to want to work for it, because it's if it came in a pill, everybody would take it.
So I got to ask you, when you were arrested, and did they recognize that you had an addiction, and so they put you into some sort of a rehab or detox or something like that to get you through it, or did they just throw you in a cell and say, "Deal with it"?
Yeah. So, when the police officers are arresting you, they'll say they'll say that they're going to, and so they told me, yeah, we'll get you the help you need. We'll get you into a place, and they'll fix you up. And I was over it. I was over. I so so I pretty much I told him everything. I ratted on myself like I was the best witness against myself. And yeah, that wasn't good. But yeah, just I don't know. I didn't, I just gave them everything they needed. And they sent me to the county jail, and I did not even get an aspirin. I go to there was a nurse the first day, and I walked up to the male nurse and I said, I'm really sick. I'm kicking heroin. Do you have anything that can help me? And he looks me in the eye and he says, we like to bring you down like a spaceship, hard, hot, and fast.
Oh God.
And I'm like, I wanted to kill him, but that's how I came down, hard, hot, and fast. And
Isn't that dangerous? Can't people actually, in that process of the withdrawals and stuff, can't people die from that?
heroin withdrawals are really uncomfortable and they're really memorable. Generally, alcohol withdrawals will kill you, though.
Ah,
Heroin withdrawals usually don't kill you unless you have some other complications with that.
you
And
just
all,
wish that you were dead.
yeah, which is good because you know what? I remember every miserable moment of that, which is probably a memory I needed to. It was an experience I needed to have, and I don't forget that. I forget what it was like to enjoy the drug, but I don't forget how miserable it made me feel.
Well, I'm glad that. Well, I'm not glad that you had that experience, but I'm glad for the man that you are now, coming through all of that.
Well, thank you. I'm glad for it too. It was not easy. It was a hard lesson to learn. I think at the point where I was at, yeah, I don't know if there was anything else that really would help me because I was pretty far gone and pretty. I was at the point where I didn't care about myself anymore. So it needed to be a really life altering experience. Otherwise, I wasn't going to get what I needed out of it.
Did you ever consider ending your life during in that period?
Yeah. And actually, I tried a couple times to do that. When it came down to the nitty gritty of it, I just always couldn't fully go through with it. And that fight to hold on to your life at the end of it is really strong. Um, I've heard people say, "Oh, suicide is the coward's way out." Man, I think it takes a lot of takes a lot to go through with it. At least, I know what they're saying when they say it's the coward's way out, but you've got to be committed to that. I remember one time taking a bunch of pills, and I was about to. I felt myself about to go down, and all of a sudden, my dog jumps up on my lap and he starts pawing at me with one hand to pet him. So I start petting him, and then that wasn't enough. He starts pawing at the other hand. So he was like insisting that I pay complete attention to him and pet him with both hands. And I think he knew. I think he sensed something was wrong, and I think he saved me that night.
Dogs are amazingly perceptive and amazingly smart.
Yeah, I'm thoroughly convinced that's what happened that night.
Well, and congratulations, because you have now got a story. Because someone like me, I can't tell. If you're, I drove a bus for a long time, and there were guys that would get on and that were clearly under the influence, and I'd say, "Why do you do that to yourselves?" And it could never get through because I'd never been through what they've been through. Didn't have know their story, didn't know why they were doing or how it was the way that they were, and so, but someone like you can generally make a positive impact in the world.
I hope so. I speak out on TikTok and on my Facebook reels, and I speak about addiction and I speak about the path to recovery. Um, and I get a lot of I got a lot of feedback from the people who watch it, and it seems like a lot of people want to hear that message, and it's yeah. I mean, nobody can help an addict quite like another addict can.
Yeah.
Somebody who's walked this path and been through it and came out on the other side. That's the experience that we share and the hope that only another addict can bring to somebody who's struggling.
Well, and nowadays, and I was astounded by this stat, but the same lady whose son passed away, and she's now an advocate for getting rid of this, and also helping um, helping people in hospitals understand what it is and the drugs that they're going to get and that sort of thing, so that they can help keep them away from addiction and stuff. And she was telling me that last year in 21, 100,000 people passed away from overdose. And that to me was like an astounding number. I mean, we are in a real tough place when it comes to um, drug addiction, and especially coming out of the pandemic and lots of hopelessness and stuff. It really is hard for folks and for people to. I've known several people that have passed away, and they were young, vibrant, alive, and then they weren't. So your work and what you talk about is really important, and I wanted to stress that because you can help people like nobody else can.
Yeah, well, that's the idea. And I write about it too. I'm an author, by the way, whatever.
Yep, you you're
So,
you're an author. Let me go. Let's go down that. I want to make sure people know you're an author. You've got a publishing company, Last Waltz Publishing dot or last walsh publishing.com is the website if you want to go there. You have several authors, and you do a broad range of stuff, and you do a lot of horror stuff, and you do a lot of real life issues and stuff. So that's also cool. How long have you been out of prison per se?
on oh my God, today's November. I was released on November 4th, 2 years ago. 2 years ago today. I didn't
Congratulations.
even, yeah, I didn't even realize another anniversary. Like, wow, that's yeah. So I was released. I was actually released 6 months early because I was in the last year of my sentence. I was in a halfway house
Ah,
uh, during COVID-19. Um, so also, you probably didn't hear how many people were dying in the prison system from COVID, or you may have.
nope.
Um,
And that's not public knowledge, generally speaking.
yeah, so in New Jersey, where I was, we had the most inmates die from COVID-19, and it was rampant in the halfway houses and in the prisons where around in my area. Since I am a writer, I wrote to the senators and I wrote to the the newspapers and to NewJersey.com and I wrote to the attorney general and I wrote to the governor and my little letters that I sent probably didn't amount to a hill of beans, but the New Jersey got together under Governor Murphy, and they enacted emergency credits for prisoners who were close to getting out. So, guys who had done good time, were really close to getting out, were granted between 6 and 8 months off of their sentences to get them out of the prison system that was running rampant with COVID-19. Um, so, I was released 6 months early and was able to take part in that great program, which allowed me to get out to my family earlier than expected. So that was quite amazing.
Well, congratulations. Now there is somebody listening to us right now, and I think they're still listening, that lost a very good friend to an overdose in in the
Sorry.
last 4 months or so, and it was devastating for everybody around them. What advice do you have for people who are around people who may have been? Now, I believe in her case, she was in recovery, and apparently this happens a lot. She was in recovery and relapsed, and the relapse was a harder fall than the initial because she thought she could pick up where she had left off, which was not the case, and so it was an overdose situation. And what advice do you have for people that are surrounding those folks?
You mean the advice for those who are around people who
How
are.
if Yeah, if somebody is, if you're concerned about somebody, do you know of any help that they can get? Or is that more of a
Yeah,
state by state thing?
you know what I found, there were a lot of people who tried to help me when I was there, and as addicts, we become very defensive because we feel like you're trying to take away our survival. By telling us we can't do drugs anymore, we feel attacked. At least I did. I felt attacked, and now I felt like, okay, you're the enemy. Um, I would say, the people who can help an addict is another addict, and you can't force sobriety on someone, especially if they're in the grips of it. But you can introduce them to someone if it's seems benign, and it's not like you're forcing this to happen. Say, hey, this is my friend John, and yeah, this guy, you should have seen him 10 years ago. This guy was using like you wouldn't believe, and I don't know. Yeah, you guys have a little bit in common. Maybe you want to talk a little bit. And you'd be surprised that you know, say, oh yeah, you do this, you do that. When two addicts start talking and they first bond over what they've done, you know, that's where it starts. Um, it's in that sharing. I think somebody who hasn't used and tries to, it often doesn't work. When somebody who hasn't used, or a parent or a sibling, intervention is, man, I don't think intervention is the right way. Um, Although it might be what we really need. We really need somebody to step in and take us out of society against our will. But it's, you've got to want it, and you got to do it for yourself. So I think it starts with meeting somebody who's been in it before, and if you wanted to help somebody who's struggling, I think the way to do it would be to, I'm not saying sneaky about it, but be like, hey, oh, that's funny. This is John. You think you're bad? You should have met this damn guy about a year ago. Oh, I thought he was, I think that's good. Would do a lot more than and you can find those people who are willing to help in AA, in NA. There's smart recovery. For some people, you know, it's spirituality that does it. Um, you know, Clergy, talking to someone like that. Essentially, there's like, usually it takes a strong spiritual connection to bridge that gap. Whether the addict gravitates to that or recoils from it is a whole other thing. But usually when it works, it's based in that. Um,
So when you were first imprisoned and you were that rocket ship that crashed and burned, how long was it before you started feeling like yourself again?
a long time. Um, I'd say the first. I always say it was 40 days before I actually got a full night's sleep. It was tossing and turning, and going through withdrawals, and feeling uncomfortable in my own skin, and not being right. Somewhere between 3 and 6 months, I started to feel again. Because that's the thing with opiates and heroin. We stopped feeling it blocked my feelings. Of course, there's still feel depressed, but that's the drugs doing it. But I started to feel again, and I started to think about the people who I wronged, and the people who was missing, and my family. So we say the best thing about getting off of drugs is that you get your feelings back, and the worst thing about getting off drugs is that you get your feelings back. Yeah.
I knew
So
you were going to go there.
yeah, so it was 6 months before I was like, watching a Hallmark channel and crying, in touch with my feelings again. It took a while, and then still that whole first year is like you're clean, but you're crazy still. It took years for me to for my brain to come back, and and my emotions too. It it's not a it's a long road, and it's a difficult one.
That's why so many people relapse, isn't it?
Yeah, man, and you're never out of the woods because if you're not doing what needs to be done, you know, to keep yourself maintained, it could happen at any point. They say we're in recovery. They say we're not cured. We're in recovery. But I'm thoroughly convinced that addiction is a disease, and with every disease, there is a cure. Um, and so I mean, if you look at it from the standpoint of the criteria of disease, um, does it affect an organ? So yes, it does. It affects the brain, and also, I mean, the liver, the lungs, whatever you're using. But addiction affects the brain, and it makes you not think right. Is the second criteria is, are there symptoms? There are definitely symptoms when you become a liar, you become untrustworthy, you start committing crime, you stop caring about yourself. And then the third and final criteria, is there a cure? Well, millions of people have found recovery through programs like Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous and Smart Recovery, and by talking to members of the clergy, and by living a lifestyle that's healthy. So I would say yes, there is a cure. So, in that sense, this is a disease, and it's curable if you do what's necessary.
Looking at your life now, where you're at now, having a publishing company, being a published author, do you think it's kind of like a bad dream?
A nightmare. Um, I didn't think I was ever going to wake up from that dream. It's, when you get out of prison and you've been through like addiction, and been through the trenches, a lot of it's fading. It's like a memory that, like, I can't quite hold on to. I guess that's trauma
Hmm.
and stress. And I'm trying to write it down and put it in a book, and retell it, but it's fading, like a bad dream. Like when you wake up from a nightmare and you want to remember that nightmare, like it's getting harder to hold on to. Um, and I guess that's the brain's defensive mechanism for trying to put trauma, you know, not at the forefront.
Going through everything that you've gone through, do you think that there are elements of people that have been in prison for a while and stuff like that? Is there elements of PTSD and post traumatic stress and that sort of thing, even after they get released from prison?
Yeah, well, I mean, sure. I guess it depends on the how long the person's been in, and I guess it depends on the situations they were subjected to in prison. But yeah, definitely, there's that. I was never introverted, or never had any kind of anxiety prior to going in. Coming out now, I'm really not very. I'm outgoing on the internet, but I being in crowds is a little uncomfortable for me, and going to social events is a little much still. And when I first got out, like, I remember walking into, it was either Target or Walmart, and I had a full blown panic attack because it was just too big. And yeah, no, that stays with you. People.
I had the opportunity years ago. I had the opportunity to. I was an amateur boxer, and I had the opportunity to go fight at a place in Washington State. It's called Monroe Reformatory. Now they call it a
Oh,
reformatory, but it's a prison. It's and it's got all the earmarks of what a prison would be like and so forth. And for me, going into that place, because I'd never been exposed to anything like that, and I was just visiting, and it scared the shit out of me. What's it like when you get sentenced to be in a place like that, and the sentence is a long time from now that you're going to be spending there?
Yeah, you know, I knew it was going to be long. Um, it's debilitating. I remember the place I was in, the county jail I was in was kind of like a country club of county jails. And then from there, 18 months later, I got sent to the reception facility where they figure out where you're going. Now that was the first time that steel bars closed behind me. So
Oh,
those cells were steel bars, and it had been built in the 1800s, and there was no heat or air conditioning, and there were rats and roaches running all over. It was like I had a Papillon, and man, I those steel bars shut, and that clang goes through your soul. Um, And then, when they told me, I go to the reception and they're like, okay, you're going to Northern State Prison. Northern State Prison in New Jersey is one of the largest gang prisons in the state. And I'm like, really? Are you sure? And they're like, oh yeah, you'll be fine. I felt like they were sending me to the Thunderdome. Um, and I'm just like, this is it. This my life is over. I'm done. This is I don't know what's gonna happen. But there's this whole thing like prison. Your first day of prison is this make or break situation, and you go up to the biggest guy and you knock him in the teeth, and everybody leaves you alone. Prison is not like that. And you will do wise not to do that if you go to prison. I got sent to my cell my first day of prison, and I'm carrying my clothes. And the door opens, and there's this huge guy with gold teeth laying on the bottom bunk. And I'm about to come in the room, and he goes, whoa, 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 my man, before you come in here, what are you in here for? And I'm like, I'm here for robbery. He's like, that's a real respectable crime. Come on in. 'Cause they want to make sure you're not a molester or a pervert, before um, you do that. So that's one thing that the people in prison will not tolerate, especially anybody who's hurt a child. Um, so became very good friends with that man who became my bunkie for years and years. A well-respected gang member, and he taught me that if you are a thorough dude, he always said a thorough dude. If you say what you mean, do what you say, look people in the eye, shake their hands. If you're wrong, say I'm sorry, and be a thorough dude, you will have no problems in the prison system. That might be maybe 99% of the time that will work. Of course, there's the randomness and depending where you get sent. But for me, I was true to who I was. I got into education, I got into my spirituality. And when I told somebody I was going to do something, I did it, and I was honest, and I lived a honest life, and it served me well because I was surrounded by good people and I didn't have any problems.
but if you approach it the wrong way, you can get into problems, and they can be pretty horrific. I've heard.
Absolutely. Conversely, I saw the guys who came in and immediately started going for the drugs and started getting in debt and started running with the gangs, and their prison bids turned out to be nightmares. Um, so yeah, you've got a path when you get there of what you're going to do.
You just said something that is I heard it. I'm not sure I heard it correctly. How the hell do you get into debt in prison?
All right, so there's gambling.
Oh,
Um, there's
there is
gam-
that.
there's gambling. There's drugs. For whatever Of course, there's poker tables there. So you've got the poker table. You could get into it. You could borrow stuff from people. A lot of guys, they have medication in prison, and some people, get drawn to the different medications. So they buy other people's medication, or, the drugs that come in, they buy that, and a lot of times find themselves in debt. And yeah, no, there's financial uh, commodities in prison. It's usually done with food, or things you buy off a commissary, or you call up and have your people put money on another person's book. So there's a barter system. There's a commerce in prison.
Are cigarettes? You see in some of the older movies, you see cigarettes and cartons of cigarettes being given to folks and stuff as a compensation for. And is that were they are cigarettes part of that, or is that kind of
No, they
early
got
on?
rid of the cigarettes a long time ago. So
Oh,
that
so you can't smoke in prison.
no, no. Uh, I don't think there's any prisons going on. I don't know for sure, but in New Jersey, they took the cigarettes out of the prison sometime in the 80s, I believe, maybe
Yep.
early 90s. Yeah.
But you can still go to a poker game. Don't people understand that if you play poker, I don't care if you're in prison or not in prison. If you play poker and don't pay your debts, you are liable to have an issue with somebody.
Yeah, no, that's not good. Don't play poker unless you can pay your debts. That's for sure.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, and you're an awesome man. You have done a great deal, and please continue to do what you're doing. You can help people, and that is so important. And I applaud you for what you're doing, and I thank you for it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And would you like to talk about your publishing company? If there's a budding author out there that might like to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm the owner of Last Waltz Publishing. You can find us on the web at www.lastwaltzpublishing.com. You can email us from there. And if you go to the website, you can see, what we like and what we're looking for. I'm very drawn to authors who have been previously silenced, marginalized voices, female authors, indigenous, people of color, um, LGBTQ authors. Uh, and authors who have been previously incarcerated, people like that. I'm trying to help, like people helped me when I got out. So if you are an author and you might be interested in seeing if we're a good fit, send me an email, or reach out, via the website, and we can talk about it.
And just in case they missed the website, one more time.
Yeah, that's www.lastwaltzpublishing.com.
And your episode is going to be on YouTube. It is now. It'll stay on YouTube, and it'll go to um, positivetalkradio.net and all the sites, as they say, wherever you get your podcasts, you'll be able to find it there.
Fantastic.
And I really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you so much for what you're doing. And if you and I can do this, and somebody listens to it, and they're helped by it, then you and I have done our job.
And I'll just end it with this. When I got sentenced, I stood up before the judge, and I told him, hey, I know I did wrong, but I've been doing this to change my life, and I I've got a message that I can deliver to people now, and I know you're going to sentence me to to a maximum sentence. And he goes, unfortunately, I do have to sentence you. He goes, but if while you're down or when you get out, you can help just one person, maybe this will have all been worth it. So, if I can help just one, then it'll be worth it.
Well, I'm glad that you're out and you're free from addiction, and you're doing the right thing, and you're taking care of yourself and your family and those around you. And that's, you know, you- you've done well.
Thank you so much.
And thank you. Will you come back and we talk again?
Absolutely. I look forward to that. That would be great.
I will invite you back again because and there's also a radio show that I do on KKNW in Seattle, and I would love to have you on that as well because and that show goes out. Who knows who's going to listen to it, but I know that you're a spiritual man these days, as am I, and I believe that whoever needs to hear the message, the powers that be will put that in front of them.
Absolutely. That's the way it works. Definitely.
I think so as well. So
Mm-hmm.
we've been talking to Robert, and your last name again?
That's Kiyoshi, and I go by the pen name Daemon Manx as an author, but that's the real name. That's the one I got locked up with, Robert Kiyoshi.
And that's it's a great Italian name, I think. So
That's
so
it.
and I thank you for being here. And is there anything else that you'd like to say to our audience before we go?
Well, I would just like to, reach out to the addict who's still struggling and say, there's something we say in prison is a closed mouth doesn't get fed. So if you are struggling with addiction and you don't see a way out of it, it starts by talking to somebody. So reach out to somebody. Um, you can call people from NA. You can call people from AA. You can stop in a church and talk to the clergy there. There's people out there who are willing to help. Anyone who's been through what you do, talk to a fellow addict. They're the ones who are going to give you the best insight and point you in the right direction. Go to Last Waltz Publishing and give me an email. I'll steer you in the right direction.
You're an outstanding human being, and that's
Okay.
that's probably the best compliment I can give you.
Thank you so much.
And I thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You're an awesome dude. You wait right there, and I'll be right back. Hey, thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of PositiveTalkRadio.net. Please visit our website, oddly named PositiveTalkRadio.net, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we got.